Hola chicos, bienvenidos a otra lección del capítulo 4. Today we are covering reflexive pronouns. ¿Qué son los verbos reflexivos? What are they? We had a bit of an introduction in the previous video where we talked about our routine. Okay, so los pronombres reflexivos, what are they? Piensa, right? Pero antes, before, quiero que veamos este verbo. Right? We know this verb, lavar, which means to wash. Um, Piensa, es un verbo AR, ER o IR. It's an AR, ER, or an IR verb, right? It's an AR verb, right? Lavar, muy bien. So what are some things that you wash? ¿Qué son algunas cosas que tú lavas? Right? In the previous activity, the previous lesson, we talked about lavarse la cara, right? To wash our face. So sabemos que lavamos la cara. Maybe you're saying you wash your car, you wash the dishes, you wash your clothes. ¿Sí? Y esas son válidas, right? Those are things we do wash, right? We wash things that are not part of us, como los platos sucios, like the dirty dishes, right? La ropa, el carro o el coche, right? We do these things. We wash dishes, we wash clothes, we wash a car. En español, we would say, yo lavo los platos sucios, yo lavo la ropa, yo lavo el carro, right? Repeat after me. Yo lavo los platos sucios. Yo lavo la ropa. Yo lavo el carro. Excelente. So we know the conjugations of AR verbs because we know that lavar, it's an AR verb, right? We know that these have endings of o, as, a, amos, an, right? So remember when we identify the verb AR, ER, IR, right? We drop the AR ending and then we plug in these new endings, right? So that is what we're basically doing when we're saying that we wash certain things that are not part of us, that are not attached to us, right? Excuse me. Like los platos sucios, right? The dirty dishes, la ropa, el carro, things that are not part of our body. Pero también lavamos cosas que son parte de nuestro cuerpo, the things that are attached to us, parts of our body. We talked about, right? Lavarse la cara. We talked about washing our faces in our routine, right? Pero también lavamos nuestras manos. We wash our hands. We wash our face, right? We wash our hair, right? Por ejemplo, if I want to say, I wash my hands en español, and you can repeat it and act it with me, ¿sí? En español diríamos, me lavo las manos, ¿sí? O yo me lavo las manos, right? Because I am washing my hands. Someone else doesn't wash my hands. I wash my hands, right? Me lavo las manos. I'm doing that action to myself. If you want to say, she washes her face, right? Ella, right? She washes her face. Ella se lava la cara. Repite conmigo. Repeat it after me. Ella se lava la cara. Ella se lava la cara. Excelente. Nosotros o nosotras nos lavamos el cabello. Right? Lavamos el cabello. So we wash our hair. Now notice here we're not saying me ducho o nos duchamos, right? Like in the previous activity, the previous lesson, but we're saying we wash our hair. ¿Sí? Nos lavamos el cabello. So if you've noticed, the conjugations for the AR verb lavar stays the same, right? We still conjugated the same. We drop the AR, we plug in the new ending. However, right, we have the reflexive pronouns. So these are called reflexive pronouns. Me lavo las manos. Se lava la cara. Nos lavamos el cabello. And so these reflexive pronouns tells us who's doing the actions to themselves, right? So me, right? Like we've seen in me gusta, me llamo. Me is usually for ourselves, right? Me lavo las manos. I wash my hands. ¿Sí? Ella se lava la cara. Ella se lava la cara. She washes her face. She's doing that action to herself, right? Nosotros o nosotras, everyone, we do that, right? We wash our hair. Nos lavamos el cabello. And so you are familiar with me and nos, right? And so we need to know who our subject is, who's doing that actions to themselves or to oneself, right? So to say we wash something that's not part of us, like dishes, cars, clothing, we use the regular conjugation of lavar. Yo lavo los platos sucios, like in those examples I gave you at the beginning, right? Yo lavo los platos sucios. I wash. To say that I wash my face, right? We always need to have a reflexive pronoun. For example, we've been working with me lavo la cara, me ducho, me cepillo los dientes, right? Me. Me, that would be a reflexive pronoun because I am the subject. I'm doing that to myself, right? So yo me lavo la cara. Now notice this is in parentheses. You can use the yo, but you don't necessarily need it because me already tells us who is doing the action to who, right? So the subject, it's already here. Me lavo la cara. Okay. And so if we look side by side, see, tenemos lavar, the regular conjugations. Yo lavo, tú lavas, él, ella lava, right? Nosotros lavamos, ellos, ustedes, ellas lavan, right? We know the ending, o, as, a, amos, an, right? Pero un verbo reflexivo, you see here we have lavar versus lavarse, okay? That SE, every time you see a verb that ends in SE, that is a reflexive verb because remember, we have three types of verbs. ¿Te acuerdan? AR, ER, and IR. This would be a regular AR verb, right? It doesn't have the SE. This one, it still says lavar, but now it has the SE. That tells you it's a reflexive verb and that it needs a reflexive pronoun. Lo necesita. Necesita un pronombre reflexivo. Necesita el pronombre reflexivo como me, te, se, nos y se. Again, you are familiar with these types of pronouns, right? Me gusta, we go back to me gusta, I like. Te gusta, you like, right? The same thing. Me lavo, right? The only thing here is that we're saying that we're doing these actions to ourselves. Me lavo, I wash my hands, I wash my hair, I wash my face. Me lavo. Tú, you, tú te lavas. Ella, third person, whoever she is, whoever he is, se lava. Nosotros nos lavamos y ellos, ellas, ustedes se lavan. Okay? So if you see an SE at the end of a verb, it is reflexive and you need a reflexive pronoun. When you add the reflexive pronoun, then again here, right? Me lavo. We don't have AR or SE here, right? We don't say me lavarse. No, because you're already using the reflexive pronoun that you need. Me lavo. So use the reflexive pronoun and you conjugate the verb accordingly to whoever is doing the action. See? Now, tenemos me, te, nos. You should know this by now, right? Because of me gusta, te gusta, nos gusta, right? Tells us who we're talking about. Who is doing the action, who's doing the whatever. We have se, and you noticed se is for él, ella, usted, and is also used for ellos, ellas, ustedes. Ojo aquí, be careful. Porque se se usa para los singulares y los plurales. The key thing here is that you must know who your subject is in order to conjugate the verb accordingly. So let's say we have él, ella, usted, right? We're going to use se right? But because it's a single person, like that third person, right? Not me, not you, but that person over there, right? Él or ella se lava, right? We have the verb here, lava. We conjugate lavar with él, ella, usted. If I'm talking about a group of people, more than one, right? I'm still going to use the same reflexive pronoun se, but the verb is going to be conjugated differently. That tells us who we're talking about. The an tells us we're talking about the group, right? More than one person. So you have to be careful with that. Entonces, lavarse. Again, we have the reflexive verb. We have the se. It tells us it's a reflexive verb that we need and we must use a reflexive pronoun. Me lavo, te lavas, se lava, right? And you have them here in English. I wash myself, you wash yourself, se lava, he, she, or you in the formal washes himself, right? Nos lavamos, we wash ourselves. Se lavan, they wash themselves, ¿sí? Entonces, vamos a practicar con los verbos reflexivos. So now you have the subject. Tienen quién está haciendo la acción, who's doing the action. Now we need a reflexive pronoun. What is a reflexive pronoun here? And we have the reflexive verb levantarse, means to, right? To get up. See? Remember, levantarse y despertarse are different. Levantarse is the actual activity, like the actual motion of getting up, versus despertarse, it's to wake up. So levantarse, to get up. What's a reflexive pronoun that we need here? Yo me, right? Levanto. Again, once we use that reflexive pronoun, right, now we're looking at levantar. And how do we conjugate levantar in the first person? With an O, right? We drop the AR, we add the O. Yo me levanto. Let's try the next ones. Tú, what's a reflexive pronoun? Te, what's the conjugation of levantar for tú? What's a new ending? Levantas. Tú te levantas. Excelente. Él, ella, usted, right? Not yo, not tú, but él, ella, usted. Se levanta. What's the reflexive pronoun for nosotros or nosotras? ¿Cuál es? Nos, the ending, levantamos, right? Ellos, ellas, ustedes, pronombre reflexivo. What's a reflexive pronoun? Se levantan. Excelente. Now we have more reflexive verbs, como cepillarse, right? Again, we see the SE. What do we need when we see the SE? We need a reflexive pronoun because this is a reflexive verb. Vamos a hacer lo mismo. Again, just practice at your own pace. Yo, what's a reflexive pronoun? Me cepillo, right? We drop the SE because we added the reflexive pronoun. And cepillar, it is an AR verb, so it follows the AR pattern. Yo me cepillo. Tú te, muy bien, cepillas. Excelente. Él se cepilla. Oh, I didn't do this one. Él se cepilla. Nosotros, reflexive pronoun is nos cepillamos. Ellos, group of person, a group of people. Ellos, reflexive pronoun, se cepillan. Okay, now we have ducharse. Again, ducharse is to take a shower, but if we use me baño, right, se baña, that is fine. The only difference is ducharse, so to take a shower. Me baño is to take a bath. Okay, so tenemos ducharse, to shower, right? It is a reflexive verb because it has an SE, right? So we need a reflexive pronoun, and it is an AR verb, so it's going to be following with this pattern, o, as, a, amos, an. Secarse. This is a new one. To dry. See? To dry yourself, to dry your hair, to dry your body, right? It's also a reflexive verb. Why? Why is it a reflexive verb? What do we know? How do we know that this is a reflexive verb? Si dijiste, if you said, because of the SE, correcto. And every time we see an SE at the end, it tells us it's a reflexive verb. And what do we need? We need a reflexive pronoun. See? Afeitarse. Again, this is a review from the previous lesson. Afeitarse, which means to shave. See? An SE, reflexive pronoun. We need a reflexive pronoun. Peinarse, peinarse y cepillarse el pelo, right? To comb, to brush your hair, right? So you can use peinarse o cepillarse like we've seen in the previous lesson. Muy bien. An SE, reflexive verb. We must have a reflexive pronoun. Muy bien. Maquillarse, for those of you who use makeup, maquillarse, it's a reflexive verb, right? Because we do our own makeup. SE, we must have a reflexive pronoun. Ponerse. Now, ponerse was also in the previous lesson. Ponerse is also a reflexive verb. It has an SE, right? Let's see. Okay, so all these are ARs. This is a reflexive verb. It has an SE, but it's not an AR verb. It's an ER verb, okay? And this verb in particular, poner, to put on, is irregular in the yo form because in the yo, it ends in go. So pongo, right? So after we use a reflexive pronoun, me, then we're left with poner, er, right? And so when we try to conjugate poner in the first person, the yo, we're going to say me pongo. So we drop the ER and we add the GO. So this is what we call a yo-go verb, right? In the yo form, it ends in GO, yo-go, okay? Then we have some other irregular reflexive verbs that we've seen with our routine lecture, right? We have vestirse, despertarse, and the two new ones are dormirse y acostarse, to sleep and to lie down. And so these are irregular because there is a change in the stem. So let's look at despertarse, well, acostarse. Let's do acostarse, right? So acostarse, it's a reflexive, it has a SE, right? And it's an AR verb. So the AR, the ending's still the same. However, we have this thing here right next to it, right? It says O to UE. So what this means, and you're usually going to see this with irregular verbs, I'm usually going to put them in parentheses for you so you know that this O, we delete it, right? We take it away, and it's replaced by this UE, right? So now instead of dropping just the AR and doing one step, right, and adding that O because it's an AR verb, now we have to look at the stem. So let me share my screen with you. So we have, nope. Acostarse. Okay. So tenemos acostarse. And we know it's a reflexive because it has an SE, right? When we have an SE, we need a reflexive pronoun. We're going to be using me, okay? So after I use that me, right? Now I can take away SE and I'm left with acostar, right? And so acostar, this is now an AR verb. See? We drop it, right? and this becomes an O. Now, what you see here, red, to yellow. Accost, that is what we called the stem, right? Because we needed the AR, so this would be our stem. Now, with irregular verbs, something happens here that makes it irregular, right? Because regular AR verbs, we just replace the ending with an O, a, as, amos, an, right? With irregulars, we drop the AR, ER, or IR, but we also have a change in the stem. Now, in the presentation, you saw O to UE. Well, what does this mean? ¿Qué significa esto? ¿Por qué está aquí? Right? O to UE. That means that in the stem, we are going to replace this O with a UE. You see that? Entonces, vamos a tener me, because we still have a reflexive, right? We started with a reflexive pronoun. We're just kind of breaking it down into steps. So we have our reflexive pronoun, me. And so I want to say I lie down, right? Me, right? AC. And this one, because we're substituting that O with the UE, we add UE, right? Just the O. So I still keep the S and the T. And what is the ending for AR? You see that? Me acuesto. I lie down, right? Same that happens with tú. Tú, what is the reflexive pronoun for tú? Te, muy bien. Right? Acuest, right? Now, because we know that that O is replaced with the UE, we're going to keep doing that with all of them, except for one. Let's keep going and find out which one. Tú te acuestas, right? Because AS is the ending for tú. Now, él, ella, usted, that's a reflexive. Se acuesta, that becomes our stem. And the ending is an A, right? Now we have nosotros. Now for nosotros, the stem does not change. It changes for all of them except for nosotros and vosotros, but we're not working with vosotros. So we're using nosotros, nos acostamos, right? So there's no change in the stem with nosotros. So you change it in all of them except nosotros, right? So now, ellos, ellas, ustedes, se, remember it's the same reflexive pronoun as the singular. But now, still doing the stem change and adding the an at the end. Do you guys see that? Hopefully you do. Let's see. So we have stem change, right? Stem change and stem change. Nosotros does not change. And then we still have the regular AR endings. O, as, a, amos, an. So now you have to do an extra step, okay? And that happens with the other, share. With the other ones, right? And so how we have here, me acuesto, right? Yo me acuesto, tú te acuestas, él se acuesta. We see we're looking at the stem change. Él se acuesta. Nosotros nos acostamos. Doesn't change in nosotros, remember that. Ellos se acuestan. Now, dormirse is the same thing, okay? Dormirse changes from O to UE. So you're going to repeat the same steps, right, that we have that we just did on the whiteboard, right? Yo me, right? And now we're replacing that O with a UE. Yo me duermo. Tú te duermes. Ella se duerme. Nosotros, nos. Does this one have a stem change? Do we change that O to UE in nosotros? No. Nos dormimos. Okay. Ustedes se duermen. Vestirse. We saw this one in the previous lecture too. Yo me visto, right? And this one changes from E to I. Yo me visto, tú te vistes, right? Él se viste, except for the nosotros. Nosotros nos vestimos. Nosotros keeps the E, okay? And so it's a reflexive verb. It has the SE, but once we use a reflexive pronoun, right, then we figure out, okay, it's an IR verb, right? It's not an AR, it's an ER. It is an IR verb. So the endings for IR verbs are O, S, E, imos, en, okay? So now we're looking at replacing that E and adding the ending for IR verbs. Vamos a ver. Let's see if you remember. Yo me visto. Tú te vistes. Usted se viste. Nosotros nos. Does this one change on the stem? No. And what's the ending for IR verbs for nosotros? Imos. Nosotros nos vestimos. Okay. Now, despertarse, right? We also saw this one in the previous lecture. Also changes in the stem from E to IE. Now, this one's a bit tricky because you think about it, you're like, well, there's two E's, right, in the stem. Which one do we change? And so the one that changes is the second one, right? This E right here is the one that you're going to replace with IE, right? Again, it's a reflexive verb. We need a reflexive pronoun. And then we figure out it's an AR verb. Again, o, as, a, amos, an. So yo me despierto. You guys see that stem change? That first E stays. The second one is the one that's got to go. And we place that with an IE. And of course, the ending of AR for the yo form is O. Tú te despiertas. Nosotros nos despertamos, right? There's no stem change here. Y ellos se despiertan. So what you want to know is you want to do who your subject is. You want to know who your subject is in order to use the correct reflexive pronoun. And then you want to know how is it that we're conjugating and if there's a stem change. So make sure that you are looking for those three things, okay, when you are using the reflexive verbs. And so we have la rutina. This is an activity that you can do on Canvas, and I'll have this with you along with some other activities, right? And I'll be sharing more information on how is it that you are to complete these other assignments that are going to be in Connect. Okay, chicos, I hope this was helpful. If you have any more questions, please let me know. Y nos vemos a la próxima. Hasta luego. Chao.